When you're in love, really in love, the world feels like it tilts in your direction. That's how I felt when I met Andrew. He had that kind of smile that felt like home. The first time we locked eyes, it was at a coffee shop, the kind of rom-com moment I never thought actually happened outside movies. I was wearing mismatched socks, he spilled coffee on his shirt, and somehow we laughed through the whole thing like we already knew each other. From that day on, it was a whirlwind. Late-night conversations, surprise flowers at my office, weekend trips just to watch the sunrise in places I'd never been. He said all the right things, held my hand like he meant it, and made me believe, truly, that I was the one. My name is Goldie Hawn. I'm not the kind of woman who falls easily. I've lived enough life to know that fairy tales don't come gift-wrapped. I've had my heart broken. I've rebuilt. I've stood on my own. But with Andrew, I let myself believe again. And maybe that's why the fall hurt so much. We were engaged by our 1-year anniversary, a candlelit proposal on the beach. He knelt, trembling just enough to make it feel real. The ring wasn't flashy, but it was classic. A family heirloom, he said. I cried. He kissed my hand. And for once, the future didn't feel like a question mark. It felt like a promise. My sister Claire was the first person I called. She answered on the second ring, and when I told her the news, her voice hesitated. You said yes? I laughed. Of course I said yes. Claire, he's amazing. Silence. Then we need to talk. The next day, Claire showed up at my apartment with her hair pulled back and her face set in that way she always gets when she's about to say something uncomfortable. You know I love you, she began. I raised an eyebrow. Always a strong start. I'm serious, Goldie. I've seen him with someone else. The room spun a little. What are you talking about? She pulled out her phone, thumbed through her photos, and handed it to me. A blurry image. Andrew, with a woman, her hand on his arm, both laughing. I saw them at a bar downtown, Claire said. Late. They were close. I stared at the photo, then handed it back. That's not proof. Goldie? He works in sales. Maybe it was a client or a friend. You didn't even talk to him. Her face flushed. I didn't want to blow it up without being sure. I crossed my arms. Well, you just did. She left soon after that, hurt, frustrated, and I stayed behind, staring at the engagement ring on my finger, heart racing. I confronted Andrew that night. I showed him the picture. He looked at it, then at me, and laughed. That's Tara. She's on our West Coast team. She just got promoted. I was congratulating her. Claire said it looked romantic. She's always been suspicious of me. She's always tried to protect me. He took my hand. Goldie, I love you. I chose you. Don't let a blurry photo ruin what we have. And just like that, the doubt began to fade. Because I wanted to believe him. I wanted the fairy tale. And I chose love over logic. Planning the wedding was a blur of lace and lists. Venue tours, cake tastings, table settings. My parents were thrilled. My friends were giddy. And even Claire, after a few weeks of awkward silence, tried to move past it. She didn't bring up the photo again. But sometimes I'd catch her watching Andrew, studying him. Like she was still waiting for him to slip. I didn't blame her, but I also didn't listen. Because the man I loved was still showing up, still sweet, still thoughtful, still Andrew, until he wasn't. It started small. Canceled dinners, vague work trips, phone calls he'd take outside. I told myself not to be paranoid. I'd already dismissed Claire once. I couldn't backtrack now, right? But something had shifted. I could feel it in the way he kissed me, a little too fast. In the way he spoke, a little too smooth. In the way my stomach nodded when he said, I've got to stay late tonight. I started noticing the little things he tried to hide. And deep down I knew. Claire hadn't been wrong. She had just been early. One Friday night, he said he had a client dinner. I kissed him goodbye, then waited 10 minutes, and followed him. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed the truth. I needed to see it with my own eyes. And what I saw, it was worse than a blurry photo. It was him, her hand in his lips on hers, his smile, the one he used on me, given freely to someone else. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. The dream cracked. The truth bled through. And all I could hear was my sister's voice. You're marrying a liar. She had been right. And now? I couldn't unsee it. I didn't confront him at the restaurant. I thought I might. I pictured myself storming through the patio seating, slapping that wine glass right out of his hand, and asking her if she knew he was engaged. But I didn't. I sat in my car, hands shaking, stomach tight, and watched until they stood up and left, arms linked, like they belonged to each other. I went home, sat in the dark, and stared at the ring on my finger like it was someone else's. It sparkled, so beautiful, so convincing. Just like Andrew. He came home around midnight. I was waiting in the living room, lights dim, glass of water in my hand, the evidence playing on loop in my mind. "Hey, babe," he said, dropping his keys. "That meeting ran so—" "Don't." He froze. I stood up, heart pounding. "You were with her, Tara." He blinked, tried to recover. "Tara, what are you talking about?" "At Lake and Vine, outdoor table, red dress, your hand on her thigh." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then he smiled. "You followed me?" I stared. "That's what you're worried about?" He stepped closer. "This is crazy. You don't understand." "I understand everything," I said quietly. "You lied. To me, to my family. You asked me to marry you with someone else on your mind." He sighed, ran a hand through his hair. "Look, it was a mistake. It's not serious. It didn't mean anything." I laughed. "Because isn't that what they always say? It didn't mean anything to you, but to me, it meant everything." I took off the ring and placed it on the coffee table. He stared at it like it was burning. "You're not seriously ending this over one stupid—" I met his eyes. "This was never real to you, Andrew. You wore me like a badge, something to flash around. But you never really loved me." He didn't deny it. He just stood there, silent. And that was the answer I needed. I called Claire the next morning. She didn't say I told you so. She didn't gloat. She just came over with a box of pastries and let me cry. "I didn't want to be right," she said softly. And I believed her. Because even though I'd pushed her away, even though I had doubted her, she still showed up. She held my hand. And for the first time in weeks, I felt safe. The wedding was canceled. Vendors called. Some deposits were lost. Some people offered sympathy. Others wanted gossip. I ignored them all. Because I wasn't just mourning a wedding. I was mourning the version of me that had believed in a lie. And she deserved silence, space, and time. Andrew tried to contact me. A few texts. A voicemail or two. But I never responded. I didn't need closure from a man who had opened wounds with his lies. What I needed was to rebuild, not just my heart, but my trust in myself. Because that's what betrayal steals most. It makes you question your instincts, your choices, your ability to see people clearly. But with every morning I woke up without him, with every meal I made for just myself, with every sunset I watched in peace, I remembered, I am not broken. I was never the problem. And his betrayal? That was his reflection, not mine. Claire and I grew closer than ever. We went on long walks, tried new restaurants, laughed over dumb movies, and cried over old memories. She reminded me who I was, and more importantly, who I wasn't. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't naive. I wasn't weak. I was Goldie Hawn, and I had survived the fire without letting it turn me to ash. A month passed. The pain dulled, but it never fully disappeared. Some days, I'd wake up feeling strong. Other days, I'd catch myself staring at a grocery store couple holding hands and feel that familiar ache rise up in my chest. But I was healing, piece by piece, until Claire called one morning and asked if I was sitting down. "I just found something," she said, "and I don't know how to tell you." I sank onto the couch, heart already pounding. "What is it?" "You remember when you said Andrew told you the ring was a family heirloom?" "Yeah." He lied. Claire had been helping a friend of hers, a jeweler, track down some stolen merchandise from a supplier. She happened to mention the ring Andrew had given me, and when she described it, her friend went quiet. "That exact ring was reported stolen 2 years ago," she told Claire. "We had pictures, a report, everything." Claire asked to see it, and when she did, she realized it matched mine perfectly. My engagement ring. The one Andrew had said belonged to his grandmother. Stolen, resold, and passed off as a precious heirloom. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. I didn't want to believe it. So I went to the jeweler myself, asked for confirmation, brought in the ring, which I had kept tucked in a drawer. The moment he saw it, his eyes widened. "That's it," he said. "That's the one." I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just a lie. This was fraud. I started tracing the details. I pulled up everything I had on Andrew. The company he said he worked for, he was listed, but not in the role he claimed. He wasn't a regional sales director. He was a contract employee, and he'd been let go 6 months before the proposal. The trips he'd taken for work, they were nowhere in his expense records, because there were no expense records, because he'd been lying about his job and using me as his cover. The gifts, the surprises, the dinners, bought on credit, not his credit, mine. He had used my name to open a shared account for wedding planning. I had never read the fine print. I trusted him. The limit? $15,000. The balance? Maxed. My blood turned to ice. He wasn't just cheating. He was conning me. Claire found an old friend of his from college, someone who had dated Andrew briefly. She confirmed what we feared. "This isn't the first time," she said. "He's done this before. Gets close to women, builds their trust, then bleeds them dry, emotionally and financially." She'd pressed charges, but he'd disappeared before the court date. I sat on the floor of my bedroom with all the paperwork around me, receipts, statements, copies of text threads, and I cried harder than I did the night I caught him cheating. Because this wasn't just heartbreak. It was betrayal layered on betrayal. And I had to do something. I called the police, filed a report, then called a lawyer, froze the account, started building a case, piece by piece. Claire helped me organize everything. Emails, voicemails, messages where he promised to take care of everything. Credit card charges to places I'd never been, the fake job title on his business cards, the lies wrapped in pretty words, and finally the ring, the cherry on top of his illusion. Andrew called me 2 days later. "Blocked number," I answered. "Goldie," he said. "I made mistakes, I panicked, I was under pressure." "You lied," I said. "I didn't mean to." "You stole, you cheated, you created a fantasy and dragged me into it." "I loved you," he whispered. "No," I said. "You loved what I gave you." Silence. "I'm filing charges," I added. "You should know that." His voice cracked. "Please don't. I'll pay it back, I swear." I almost laughed. "You don't have anything to pay with, Andrew. That's the problem." And I hung up. I filed the claim the next day. The investigator nodded as I handed over the last of the documents. "You've got a strong case," he said. "It's going to take time, but we'll catch him." I nodded. Because I wasn't just doing this for myself. I was doing it for every woman he'd hurt before me, and everyone he might hurt after. The legal case moved slowly, but my healing didn't. Every week, I checked something off my reclaim list. That's what Claire called it. A list of things that Andrew had touched, tainted, or stolen one way or another. And one by one, I took them back. I started with my finances. I closed the fraudulent joint account, froze my credit, changed my passwords, called the bank and explained everything, down to the fake ring and false engagement. I filed the fraud paperwork and started the long, tedious process of restoring my credit. Was it exhausting? Yes, but every document I signed felt like a small piece of myself returning home. Then I took back my home. I redecorated, took down the framed engagement photo in the hallway, repainted the bedroom a warm, dusty rose. I got rid of the wine glasses we used to toast with, donated the candle holders he picked out, and bought myself a brand new reading chair, one I'd wanted for years, but always felt was too indulgent. That chair became my favorite place in the world, because it was mine, no one else's. Then I wrote a letter, to Andrew, not to send, just to say what needed to be said. I wrote about the love I thought we had, the betrayal that burned like fire, the nights I cried, and the days I didn't recognize myself in the mirror. I wrote about Claire and how she'd saved me, about the money, the lies, the shame, and I ended it with the words, "You didn't destroy me, you freed me." Then I burned it, and watched the ash float gently into the sky. The police eventually tracked Andrew down. He was living under a different name in another state, working as a consultant. They brought him in for questioning. The stolen ring, the fraud, the impersonation, it all caught up to him. The DA offered me options, restitution, a court appearance. But I declined the spotlight, because for once I didn't need everyone to know. I just needed him to know. I was no longer his victim. Claire and I planned a trip, just the two of us. A weekend away at a quiet cabin in the woods with nothing but tall trees, a lake view, and stacks of books we'd been meaning to read. One night, sitting by the fire, she turned to me and asked, "Do you miss him?" I took a long sip of wine before answering. "I miss the version of him I thought was real, but I don't miss him." She nodded. "That's progress." And it was. Now, when I tell this story, and I do because I've found that sharing it heals others too, I don't focus on Andrew. I focus on what came after. The strength I didn't know I had. The love of a sister who refused to stay silent. The truth that, no matter how clever a lie, it can't outlast a woman who's decided to rise. My name is Goldie Hawn. I was lied to, cheated on, conned, and humiliated. But I didn't stay broken. I turned the ashes of that engagement into fuel. I built something stronger, smarter, softer even, but in a way that no longer bends for someone else's comfort. So no, I didn't walk down the aisle. But I walked back into myself. And that's a kind of love story too.